Hey, good morning, everybody. What's going on? This is Average Discussion. Thank you for joining me today on Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. It's a brisk 37 degrees just outside the Salt Lake City area in my super secret recording place of a gas station in my local community. Thank you for joining me today in Studio F350. Let's see, historical reasons. Because again, the world ends and they got to rebuild society based off of my prophetic wisdom. I want them to know what they can charge people for energy sources. So regular gasoline is $3.29 still at the place where I record. I did see some other places that had $3.39, $3.49 even. And for diesel, it's sitting at $3.89. For retrospect, to fill up Studio F350 this morning, it was a smooth $113 to get me from a quarter tank. So that's awesome. But yeah, so it's Tuesday, March 19th. I think today starts the, I don't know what they call it, the tiebreaker round, or I would refer to it as a wild card round because I like football, for March Madness. So if you haven't, excuse me, if you haven't, filled out your bracket, you might want to get on that. All right, do it. It's fun. It's crap talking, amongst the family. It builds character like chest hair. You know what I'm saying? So, let's see. What do we got today? Well, geez, I don't know. I mean, it's a really clear sky today. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day. It's a little cold right now, but I think once the sun comes up, it's going to warm up really nice. It'll be a really awesome day. Yesterday was pretty nice, so I'm excited for the day. Not really sure what the work world is going to do to me after I'm done with this. But that's on a downward slope since in like 2 weeks, most of us are going to be toast. So that's cool. Let's see. Average discussion. What do I do here? Well, I'm an average guy. I talk about average things. Okay. I don't pretend to be an expert in any one thing. I have a lot of experiences. But I'm not well versed in the educational realm, which is what people rely upon for valuable information, even though all those people consistently lie to you and use things to their advantage and hoard and control the knowledge. So whatever, it is what it is. This is where we're at in the world. All right, so generally, like I said, I just talk about whatever. Okay, I have a tendency to get off on a rant, but I try to stay focused and present things in an appropriate way. I am working on not cussing, so I do apologize if that slips out. But so far, so good. I think yesterday I had a few mishaps. I'll work on it some more, because that's the journey, guys. Just continuing to work, right? Continuing to work on your shortcomings, and just be better all around, right? So that's the journey. That's what we're working towards here. So if that's not the gravy train you're on, the mashed potatoes are somewhere else, all right? All right, so I generally start with some news topics to just kind of get my brain flowing, get some conversation topics, things like that. I try to avoid politics, but we live in a very political dominant world, so it does come out periodically. So if you're not interested in listening to politics, I do encourage you to stick around and check out the rest of the show, because it is not what I focus on. But I do bring it up from time to time. I think that it's ignorant of us to try to avoid it entirely, because it does play such a prominent role in our lives. So, moving on. All right. I'm really glad that I came across this story, because what I'm about to talk about is something that I know for a fact that I struggle with. And it's very interesting to see some of the correlations, and some of the research being done. And it's also good to see the perspective coming out, because I don't feel like people truly understand what it is a lot of people like myself go through. All right, and what I mean by that is former service members, right? And if you've listened to my show long enough, you know that I deem myself a bad veteran. Okay, I'm not one of those guys that sits up here and talks about how great everything is. I personally look at a lot of things as being bad, but that's not to say that I discredit everything that I did or that anybody else is doing, right? Like, there is nobility in that. There is honor in that. I just don't view it in terms of, I would call the Hollywood veteran. Okay, like I don't look at them in the same light. Okay, so this article was very interesting to me. I actually read through it very thoroughly because it's something that, like I said, I know I struggle with personally, right? So we'll just get right into it. So from U.S. News, it says, Navy SEAL was convinced exposure to blasts damaged his brain. So he donated it to science to prove it. Before he ended his life, Ryan Larkin, no relation, I don't think, to the lady from the immigration issue, right? But before he ended his life, Ryan Larkin made his family promise to donate his brain to science. The 29-year-old Navy SEAL was convinced years of exposure to blasts had badly damaged his brain, despite doctors telling him otherwise. He had downloaded dozens of research papers on traumatic brain injury out of frustration that no one was taking him seriously, his father said. He knew, Frank Larkin said. I've grown to understand that he was out to prove that he was hurt and he wasn't crazy. That's a common theme, right? Like we feel crazy, but truthfully, it's because we have injuries, right? And that's a common theme, is like that feeling of like being crazy, because that's how it gets, I don't know, expressed, I guess, is the best way to kind of put it, right? It's very interesting. So in 2017, a post-mortem study found that Ryan Larkin, a combat medic and instructor who taught SEALs how to breach buildings with explosives, had a pattern of brain scarring unique to service members who've endured repeated blasts. Okay, so for some perspective, like that's I didn't do the medic part, but the breaching buildings with explosives, like that's literally what I did. We built big demolition charges, did cratering charges, Bangalore's, all kinds of stuff. We did all sorts of breaching charges. Really, like that was literally our specialty. Okay, for what I did, and arguably you do more of it in training, arguably, because you're preparing for the real events, right? And I mean, we're talking just weeks upon weeks of just repeated boom, 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 right? So very, very, very relatable to someone like myself. In some other news, the gunman behind Maine's deadliest mass shooting put a national spotlight on the issue when doctors said they determined traumatic brain injury likely played a role in his behavioral changes. Okay, so Robert Card, who fatally shot 18 people in Lewiston, Maine last October before dying by suicide at age 40, he had enlisted in the Army Reserves in 2002 and had no combat deployments, officials said, but his family said he had been exposed to thousands of low-level blasts as a longtime instructor at an Army hand grenade training range. Now, this is where I think we mess up in the military community, right? Because my initial thought when I read that was like, it's hand grenades, bro. You know what I mean? That was my initial thought. And I know that comes from a place of, I usually call it, demeasuring. I don't want to say the word because I'm trying to be professional, right? But, it comes from that kind of a place, right? Like, oh, that's not bad because I did this, this, and this. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is a huge detriment to, service members in general, because it does cause, because it's a real thing. It's a stigma within the community, right? And it's a real thing. And people often will negate trying to find help for things because they feel like their experience is less traumatic, or they feel that it's less deserving of services based off of those stigmas. Like, that's a very real thing. And again, because like I said, without even thinking about it, my first thought when I read that was, it's a training range and it's hand grenades. When it comes to explosives, like, hand grenades are the least of my concerns for pressure, right? Concussive pressure. But at the same time, That's really what they are. So like I kind of get it, right? And if it's on a repeated time frame, I could totally see how that would do it. But when you lead with that part of he was in the Army Reserves, no combat deployments, he's already being judged by that community. I guarantee it. And it's a huge problem that we have because, again, our ego measuring, we tend to talk down on that. And to some extent, I would say that that's actually kind of needed, right? Because in order to do that job, you have to be willing to put yourself into these situations, right? And if every little thing is going to make you incapable of doing your job, then you really have no value. Like it's not as easy as going to work at Walmart. You know what I'm saying? Like it serves a bigger purpose, and you have to have a certain level of grit and tenacity and be able to work through certain things, right? However, I do believe that when you get to a certain point, like that kind of stuff needs to kind of go away, because the truth of the matter is that everybody's different. You know, usually like the guys who freeze up are not the guys that you would think would freeze up, right? And then the guys who are generally badasses are not the guys that you would think are going to be that, right? Like that's kind of the way it works. And so it's I say it all the time, it's still coming in the mail, guys, but it's a double-edged sword because you need it, but at the same time it can be too excessive, right? I don't know. This like I said, this topic is very, very personal to me, right? Anyways, Card's post-mortem brain study found significant degeneration and inflammation in the white matter, the nerve fibers that allow for communication between different areas of the brain. Symptoms of traumatic brain injury include persistent headaches or neck pain, fatigue, memory issues, trouble sleeping, concentration problems, chronic depression, anxiety, and apathy, researchers say. And they will give you a laundry list of medications for those that ironically kind of enhance some of the effects that also lead to some of those problems. Like I did a whole research thing on certain antidepressants, and that one of the side effects of them could be tinnitus-like symptoms, okay? But then I also did some research on tinnitus, because I have that as well. And it relates to depression. So the increased tinnitus can lead to increased depression. And then you take the medications for the depression that increase the tinnitus, that then in turn increases the depression. So they will give you a laundry list of things for those, I promise you. And it's it almost wrecked my world, man. Like, you know, when it comes to medications, depending on what it is, right? But I think especially with psychological medications in particular, I personally believe that they're a short-term thing. They should be a short-term thing. Like, get yourself stable so that you can get yourself into some real work, and then get yourself off of them. That's my personal opinion. I'm not a doctor, so please don't, if you're on these things, please don't just stop using them, okay? I mean, that's what I did. It arguably was weird for a minute, but, you know, it is what it is. But please don't stop using your medications. All I'm saying is that's my personal perspective, is that those things are good for short-time usage to help you get to a place where you can do the things that you need to do to actually correct the problems. But that's just my opinion, okay? It can also lead to aggression and violence, experts say. But cases like Card's that result in mass violence are rare. These high-profile cases, thankfully, are few and far between, Stone said, one of the people from the article. But they are a point along the overall spectrum, the different ways that the imbalance can manifest. Okay, because that's truly what it is. It's an imbalance, and like they were saying, you know, when the brain's not communicating with the proper sections, you know, I was talking to my son, because I picked him up from weights this morning, and I was kind of telling him about this article, because again, like, this is personal to me. So like now I feel like I can engage in something because I can relate to these problems. You know, I told him, I said, think of it like network cables in a computer system. You know what I mean? If you have a bad network cable, the signal's not being relayed. And that's pretty much, from what I understand, the problems that many of us suffer from. we had I mean, my job literally in Afghanistan was to look for IEDs. And sometimes they find you. You know what I mean? So like the amount of blasts it's kind of crazy, and then like I said, you arguably use more demolition during training in a controlled environment, you know what I mean? But you have to calculate standoff. And I'll tell you right now, the standoff that you might be thinking you need is not really technically what you need. You're a lot closer than you think that you would be. Like, you're not standing right by the door, but you're pretty dang close to right by the door. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of crazy. There's a whole formula. I honestly don't remember it off the top of my head because I haven't done it in years now. But there's a whole formula to calculate exactly to the inch how far away you need to be. And it's a lot closer than I think a lot of people would really think that it is, for the amount of explosives that goes on there. So, I don't know. But back to the article. So, Ryan Larkin exhibited many symptoms of traumatic brain injury, his father said. The changes we saw were uncharacteristic. That's a word that gets used a lot in the veteran community when things go south. They were acting out of character, or the things that they were doing were uncharacteristic. Like, that's a very, very, very common thing. Very common thing. And for us, at least in my experience, from my perspective, the worst part is that it too. Like, that's not who you are. Like, why are you doing these things? This is not who you are, and you still end up doing it, and there's no understanding as to why. And it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating because just like everybody else, you can see it too, but you have no idea what it is or how to stop it. Like, it's a very, very real problem. Very real problem. His father also added that his son grew anxious and became short-fused. Ryan Larkin sought help through the Navy and the VA, but doctors spoke little of traumatic brain injury and focused more on the behavioral and psychiatric diagnosis because that was what they knew, his father said. And that's, I mean, what else are they supposed to do? I'm not knocking those healthcare providers because that's one field that I truly believe people do the best that they can with the information that they have, and the resources that they have. There were more than 492,000 traumatic brain injuries, mostly mild concussions, but 492,000 traumatic brain injuries in the military between the year 2000 and 2023. But the total number of cases is likely higher. The current tally, Gore said, another person from the article, does not account for service members who have brain injury from low-level blasts over time. So in case of that card guy at a training range, it's not going to be documented unless he goes to the hospital and exhibits symptoms and problems, right? And if a service member has more than one traumatic brain injury, it is only counted once. So in my case, where there were several of them in one span, I mean, we had one guy in our unit, man, like that dude was if he dropped a stapler too hard, like his brain was probably going to be jello. You know what I mean? Like he got pretty messed up. He had so many concussive situations in such a short period of time that they actually had to pull him from the mission set. And this was back in 2011, 2012. So that was definitely before there was a ton of research about it. I think it was starting to come around, but definitely before there was a ton of research. And man, I'm not really entirely sure what happened to that guy. But all I know is he was pretty messed up, man. And you could see the physical changes in him, from his body character to everything, just the lack of emotion in a lot of things, the lack of, I don't want to say awareness, because I'm sure he knew where he was, you know what I mean? But the way he carried himself was like he had no idea where he was. Absolutely crazy. So, and according to that, like that's only going to be, categorized as one, absolutely crazy, but I'm glad that I found that article this morning. Because it's a real thing that I just like, I'm sure several of my friends from the Army, I mean, we definitely don't talk as much as we probably should. But I imagine that's problems that we all carry. And it's crazy. And the worst part is that it's not something you can, at the moment, like, you can't know the extent of the damage until you do post-mortem assessments. And that's the sad part. Like, we know that it's a thing, but we don't know how extensive it can be, right? And so we could take the situation of the guy that I was talking about, right, from my unit, where I know he had multiple IED blasts that he was a part of. But who's to say that just a single IED blast doesn't do the same amount of damage to somebody, right? Like, so like, how do you monitor this? How do you gauge this? How do you create a chart that says, okay, this is the cutoff, boom, 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 right? I don't know. It's crazy to think about, but it's super personal to me, because I literally have those issues. And what I've found is you spend so much time focusing on trying to let the outside world see that part, right? And to keep it under control to the best of your ability. I look at it like it's like an 80-20 or a 70-30, okay? So like 70% of my energy throughout the day goes to keeping that kind of stuff at bay. That leaves me 30% for everything else. My family, my job, social interaction with everyday people, right? And learning to manage that, learning to manage those stressors. It takes time. But then something changes in that dynamic. Generally in the things that you can't control, right? So like, your job or something like that. And now that's requiring more of that 30%, and then you hit this overload spot, and then that's where you start to break. That's where you start to struggle with these things. You're edgier. You just exhibit more physical characteristics of those problems, right? I used to say it all the time, like, some days I feel like it takes more for me to get out of bed. It takes more effort for me to get out of bed than most people are going to put into their day. Like, that's how I feel. And the truth of the matter is that it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Like, it makes you so just done. It makes you done. And I think that probably has a lot to do with the suicide rate amongst veterans in particular. It's that they've been working so hard to try to keep those things under control that they're just literally exhausted and they just want to be done, and the worst part is that a lot of them probably aren't going to say anything because of those ego things that we talked about before, because they're going to talk to somebody who, I don't know, had a really bad experience and lost like a ton of people from their unit, right? And they're going to look at their one little incident and think that it's like, I don't need to say anything. But again, we have no way to gauge how impactful these issues are. None. But they're not going to say anything because they don't want to be ousted by the very community. You know what I mean? And I think that's the sad part. That's definitely the sad part. I guess to an extent, like, I could say I somewhat understand it while you're in, right? Because the stigma is it's bigger. It's more prominent. That's the word I was thinking of in that environment than it is once you get out. Once you get out and you're around everyday people, like, I think it's easier to fight through. But at that point, like, most people aren't willing to do the work because they're just trying to figure out how to survive. And it's sad. It's sad. It really is. But I don't know. I wanted to talk about that one because it's personal to me. It makes you do things that you're not happy about the fact that you did. You're like disconnected in a way, right? And so, like, you lash out at people, and you never meant to lash out at them. You didn't want to lash out at them, but the way it's presented, it's like an instantaneous thing, and you almost don't even have control over it. You know what I mean? Like, you do, obviously, because you have control over yourself, but in those situations, it really just feels like you don't have any control over it, and it just, boom, it happens, and then you're like, ugh, now I got to fix this, and now I got to figure out, like, what am I doing wrong? Right? Like, that's probably the leading thing that I personally come back to. It's, what am I doing wrong? Why can I not figure this out? What is wrong? What is wrong inside my head that I can't figure this out? Like, that is very real stuff. Very real stuff. So, I don't know. What I'm hopeful for is that they can find ways to help people with those issues work through them and not utilize the diagnosis as a crutch, right? Because though I have these problems, I still have a responsibility to be a decent person. I still have a responsibility to treat people with respect in situations with respect. I can't just lash out and be like, oh, nope, my bad. It's the TBI, guys. It's the TBI. Sorry. I'm sorry I just literally slandered the crap out of you and threw stuff at you. But it's not my fault, it's the TBI, so forget about it. No, I still have a responsibility to be accountable for myself. Right? And so I hope it doesn't become a crutch thing, in the sense that people just lean on it to, you know, it's not my fault. I'm an outspoken, mean person. It's my astrology sign. You know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of thing. And that's what I really hope. So I don't know. I could talk about this stuff for days. How much time you guys got? Because that stuff is super personal to me, but super personal. Let's see. Yeah, I already wasted like 30 minutes almost on that one topic. So we're going to get going. And we're going to get a lot lighter here. Okay. So stick with me. It's not going to be depressing, and it probably won't be that insightful of me individually either, but we're going to get going. So Hong Kong lawmakers unanimously, remember that word. I've said that before. Anything that they vote on unanimously, no thank you. Hong Kong lawmakers unanimously approve law that gives government more power to curb dissent. The law threatens stringent penalties for a wide range of actions authorities call threats to, you ready for it? National security, guys, with the most severe punishable by life imprisonment. So again, unanimously, there's that. All these people that can never agree on anything, all of a sudden they agree without a problem. It can't be good for you and I, right? I mean, obviously this is Hong Kong, but it's the same thing for them, right? So the law grants the government power to quash dissent, widely seen as the latest step in sweeping political crackdown that was triggered by the pro-democracy protests in 2019. Did a whole thing about that, huh? Coincidental timing. Very coincidental. That's how impactful those protests were. And I've been trying to tell people this for several months now. Like, don't ignore that. Like, these protests were so big and had such a threat to the political systems throughout the world. It wasn't just in China, by the way, or Hong Kong. It was throughout the world. If you haven't listened to it, coincidental timing, go back, check it out. Okay, I did this whole thing explaining that, like, almost every reach of the world in 2019 was having political style protests on a massive level. And then what kind of caused all that to calm down? You guessed it. Lockdowns. Public health crisis. It's for your safety. It's national security. Anyways, the law threatens stringent penalties for a wide range of actions authorities call threats to national security, with the most severe including treason and my new favorite word that's getting thrown around a lot, insurrection, punishable by life imprisonment. Lesser offenses include the possession of seditious publications, could also lead to several years in jail. Some provisions allow criminal prosecutions for acts committed anywhere in the world. So that's right. If you got any of those anti-government books, or if you're handing out flyers for your anti-government meetings, that's right. Go to prison. That's it. Oh, and you think you're safe because you did it outside of our country? No, sir. No, prison. After the voting, Lee, whoever's in this article, announced at the council's chamber that the law will take effect on Saturday. Legislative Council President Andrew Leung said he believed all lawmakers were honored to have taken part in this historic mission. Hong Kong's mini-constitution, the Basic Law, requires the city to enact a homegrown national security law. A previous attempt in 2003 sparked a massive street protest that drew 500,000 people and forced the legislation to be shelved. Such protests against the current bill were absent, largely due to the chilling effect of the existing security law. So they tried it back in 2003. The people were like, no, kiss my backside. And so they put a new law in that gave them a little bit more authority. And then now they're like, now we can do it because now they can't come out and do this. Both Chinese and Hong Kong governments say the Beijing imposed law restored stability after the 2019 protests. The major targets espionage, disclosing state secrets, and colluding with external forces to commit illegal acts, amongst others. So, they don't want you to work with anybody. Like, they're very concerned about this. That's why they're putting all this in place. Those who damage public infrastructure with the intent to endanger national security could be jailed for 20 years. Or if they colluded with external forces, then for life. In 2019, protesters occupied Hong Kong's airport and vandalized railway stations. Those people are going to go to jail for life. That's it. Jail. The worst part about endangered national security is that is defined by people within the government. That's really what it boils down to. So that definition can change anytime they want. Business people and journalists have expressed fears that the broad law against disclosure of state secrets and foreign interference will affect their day-to-day work. Observers are closely watching to see if the authorities will extend enforcement to other professional sectors and its implications on liberties for Hong Kongers. So, I'm glad this article's in here because this is... Our very government is trying to do the same kind of stuff, you know. They're literally legislating their way to prevent us from being able to oppose them, you know. Like, we've been sold this pipe dream, I think, for a long time in this country that's only something that does happen in China. And obviously, like, I know I just read an article from Hong Kong. Okay, I get that. Because they're not going to write an article like that and release it in the U.S. That's the problem, right? But I bet you if you were in somewhere else, you're going to see articles about how tyrannical our government is. Just like Hong Kong's not going to release articles that are detrimental to Hong Kong, China's not going to release articles that are detrimental to China. You know what I'm saying? Our very government is doing the same thing. Now, maybe with the less stringent policies, you know, in terms of like the life imprisonment and stuff. But go ahead and look up what's classified as domestic terrorism, guys. And then who can be on that list as a domestic terrorist. I bet you'll be pretty surprised how easily you could fall into that same category. Because the definition is defined by them. And it can change whenever they want. To be used however they see fit. That's where we're at. Staying over there in the eastern part, or western, if you go the other direction, South Korea to suspend licenses of 2 senior doctors in first punishments over walkout. Most medical interns and residents in the country staged walkouts last month to protest the government's plan to increase medical school admissions. So basically, in a nutshell, 90% of the country's 13,000 doctors in training walked out of the job last month. Okay, and they're protesting against the admission rate, the mandatory admission rate. The government apparently said that they wanted 2,000 more admitted every year or whatever, every class cycle. And so it puts more of a strain on the infrastructure that educates the doctors, okay? And so they did a walkout. And as a result, South Korea has decided that they're going to revoke the licenses of at least 2 at this point who they said incited it and enacted it. So their strikes have caused hundreds of canceled or postponed surgeries and other treatments, but officials say the country's handling of emergency and critical patients largely remains stable. Now, I get that part too, right? Because that is a sector that has a lot of power if everybody walks out, for sure. I mean, just look at how much we rely on the medical field in our world, in our neck of the woods. And imagine if a bunch of doctors just decided not to come into work one day, for a month actually, right? The effects would be quite devastating. And I don't know. I think I agree with both sides, I guess is the best way to really put that, right? Like, I agree with where these guys are coming from. Like, stand up for yourselves and say, like, this is a bad idea, you know? Because, you know, what are we talking about in terms of education entirely anyways, right? The larger the class, the less valuable the experience, right? And so if you're expecting the class sizes to be bigger, now your standards are going to drop because you have to push people through. And that could be detrimental, probably, maybe not right away, but definitely in like 10 years, right? And so, like, I get where they're coming from, you know, but I also understand where South Korea is coming from, you know. And the official for them said, under any circumstances, you must not use the lives of the people for negotiations. And that's what they're saying that these guys did. And in a way, I kind of get that. I don't think that was the intent. But I think they understood the value that they have and they used that, right? And like any other government, let's nip this in the butt before it becomes a problem, right? But again, like in this particular situation, I think I understand both sides of it. Very interesting. So if you were scared of it or weren't aware of it, whatever, a tentative deal reached to avoid shutdown as negotiators resolve Homeland Security bill. So government's not shutting down. They like to scare the crap out of us and be like, we have no money. We have to shut down. We must pass this quadrillion-trillion-dollar bill. Right? And then everybody's like, oh gosh, yes, no. You know what? Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out later. Just go ahead and pass it. We cannot shut the government down. Shut it down. Let it go. Let it go. It's like that car that you just dumped a bunch of money into. And eventually you have to look at it and be like, first of all, this is a Mazda 6. Okay, this is nothing. This is nothing impressive. I've dumped more money in than the car's valued at. Even if I restored this thing back to pristine condition, it's not valued at the amount of money I put into. That's how I feel about our government right now. All right, and that's a true story. I had a Mazda 6. I loved that car. All right, I did. It had a lot of problems that I didn't really know how to fix. And the next thing you know, I'm putting a bunch of money into it. And I just reached this point where I was like, this has got to stop because I'm upside down. There's no value in keeping this car. It's got like 200,000 miles on it. I don't really feel like buying a new engine. It's just not worth the amount of money that I'm going to have to put into it. So I scrapped it. At least I thought I did. Somebody actually fixed it, I guess, or got it running at least. And then I saw it driving around one day, but whatever. It's not my problem. It's somebody else's problem. That's how I feel about the federal government. So let them shut down. Let them shut down because all it does is cost us more money to keep them running. Let's see. Health workers fear it's profits before protection as CDC revisits airborne transmission. So they're basically talking about safety protocols for healthcare workers. And this is a statement from it because they were talking about masks, right? And protective equipment. And it highlighted, all the healthcare workers that got sick and this and that, right? And it said, ignoring the body of research was convenient at a time when N95 masks were in short supply and expensive. So that's what they're talking about. So apparently there's a lot of, I don't know about procedures is the right word, but where they're not requiring these protective devices, right? And the healthcare workers are saying that's because it costs too much money. And so they're basically saying like they're risking our safety, our health, to save $1, which is probably 100% true. I mean, it's a business, guys. So that's our fault for making healthcare a business. That's our fault for doing that. So, and bring me all your complaints about. Well, that's how we expand research. I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way. Like, you're right. The private sector having a lot to do with it is the reason for the advances because it is funded via business. All I'm saying is it's a business. They worry about profit margins because they have shareholders who are probably in the government. Anyways, so this is what I'm going to end on this one because this is pretty much, we can get into a lot of final thoughts things on this one. So this is in the culture and trends section. It says, some dating coaches online are pushing women to seek more traditional gender roles. I see the dating scene and relationships as a business because it is, said Carla Elia, a controversial dating coach with more than 1 million followers on TikTok. We'll see how she's doing in a month. Anyways, dating coach Carla Elia, not sure how to pronounce it, tells women not to go out with a man who is nice or who treats you right, but one who can afford them. Yeah. Her advice, while highly criticized by some who have seen her videos, has dominated a pocket of the internet that depicts heterosexual romance as a deal between men and women, in which women are receivers and men are providers. The 24-year-old is part of a community of women who have gained popularity and notoriety online for their espousal, whatever, of what can feel like antiquated dating guidance. A lot of people don't like to admit that relationships are transactional, but they are, according to her. Social media has become a hub for dating advice as people have normalized confiding in internet strangers, over everything from first date horror stories to the latest relationship tests. It's given a rise to its own niches of content, from self-proclaimed dating experts building following around the advice they preach. Some of the most popular of these advice gurus are encouraging women to turn dating into a game of strategy to win. Attract a man who's willing to pay all the bills, spoil his partner with gifts and funds, and fund a lavish lifestyle. A man would never ask his dream girl to split a bill. Some of the influencers have said this in their videos. Women should see themselves as a prize, something not easily won over. Others said in videos, and self-described financial advisor Shara7, that sounds made up, who's built a loyal following teaching women how to pursue wealthy men, has said a man who wants a woman to bring something to the table can go to IHOP instead. I don't believe that men and women are equal, apart from the fact that we should have basic human rights and that we should be able to get paid the same wage for working in the same position, said Abigail's SIU, I don't know how to say that, who's 30 years old, who shares what she described as elevated dating advice on Instagram. But apart from that, we really are different biologically, physically, and emotionally. One of the Instagram posts says, nobody will ever shame a man with beauty standards, so why is it okay to shame a woman with financial standards when it comes to dating? Hey guys, if you're listening, raise your hands. Who's ever been called shallow? Oh, that's what I thought. Okay. SIU, one of the newer creators in the space, has told her followers that men are natural-born hunters who want to conquer them. That's why women shouldn't be too easy to chase, she said, or accept low effort dates like getting coffee. The movement has developed its own shorthand meant to quickly convey its values. The princess treatment is what women should demand of men, while a high-value woman is well-groomed and self-assured. Feminine energy, being nurturing, wanting a slower pace of life, is a must, while masculine energy, such as splitting the bill, is to be avoided. Those interviewed for this article said much of their dating outlook is shaped by an exasperation with endless hustle culture and ever-rising cost of living. Many said they are tired of the kind of lean-in, girl boss feminism pushed to millennials in the past decades, which they said has led to nothing but burnout and wage stagnation. It's going to sound like putting people into gender roles, but whatever. I think that at least the women I help, we're waking up, and seeing that we have been in survival mode this entire time, Aaliyah said. Our nervous system is wrecked from having to do so many things all at once, just trying to survive and pay our own bills. Join the club, sister. Woo woo. All right, so while some women, such as those in dating advice forums, genuinely share ideas that parallel those in the manosphere. I didn't even know that was a place. Is that a layer of the atmosphere? I'm super confused. Others have said online that they just want to be provided for without the strings of traditional conversation or conservative values. It's the movement that echoes the traditional wife or trad wife, as the internet has coined it, lifestyles that have drawn renewed intrigue and criticism in recent years. Videos of self-described trad wives, I feel stupid saying that, typically depict these women as committing themselves to housework and childbearing while being subservient to their husbands. But some researchers said women seeking provider men are distinctly different from trad wives, who often pride themselves on their frugality and self-sufficiency. Instead, they have no qualms about pursuing luxury living or about using their partner's financial support to free up their own time and money without the stress of the daily grind. Though many of these dating coaches push the idea of securing financial stability through marriage, some also said they're careful not to become fully reliant on a man. Just because he's covering all the bills, instead, they said, it's important for a woman to either build a separate income stream in their spare time or to save and invest their own allowances. I think the major misconception is that people think, oh, if you're getting provided for, it means you're financially dependent on your man. That's so untrue, SIU said. Being provided for means you have more resources because you get to keep all your money and you can invest them. But that's actually making you financially more independent if anything happens. Simmons, the researcher, said these influencers are selling a lifestyle that offers tantalizing alternative for women aiming to escape the life of dead-end 9-to-5s, especially in what they see as bleak economic climate. And many are tapping into their resentment against a brand of feminism that hasn't felt inclusive or that simply hasn't fulfilled its promise. But I'm not sure that turning yourself into a project to seduce a man is empowering at all, Simmons said. It just provides a kind of quick and easy solution to a few women, and it doesn't liberate women as a whole. Whew. What an article. What an article. So, low-level dating. I think that's the part that I was just like, low effort. Excuse me. Let me go back to it so I don't misquote this historic piece of literature here. Low effort dates like getting coffee. Well, damn. I feel personally attacked by that because that's one of the things I like to do with my wife is I like to take her on the weekends. We go get coffee. I feel like it's wow. I thought that was nice. Apparently, I need to go to fucking Cabo. This article got me to cuss. Dang it. All right. But apparently I need to go to Cabo every weekend instead. or the Dominican Republic. Is that what it was? I don't know. From the Love Is Blind show. That's a crazy show too, by the way. I can do another topic on that. I really think I'm well past my time frame here. So if you're still here, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. I thought that was good. So I guess I owe my wife an apology. Sorry. I thought it was just a good time for us to get out and spend some time together. I don't know. But maybe it's because we're already married though. So maybe it's okay because I'm already married and she's already. I've already conquered that prey because I'm a natural born hunter. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I can resort to coffee now because I've already slain the beast, you guys. Mounted it on my wall. Now the irony in a lot of the statements. Because listen, I do feel that it's important for women to be independent to an extent, right? Like it's important for everybody to be independent to an extent, but it's also okay to be reliant on other people. I think. I don't know. I don't feel like that's a bad thing, to need the help of other people, right? Because I'll agree that I don't agree with the old school mentality of what do they call them, trad wives, traditional housewives that were advertised in the 50s and 60s and stuff. I'm not looking for my wife to be the sole provider of the cooking and cleaning and stuff. There's no reason I can't assist with that too. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that was also a misconception of that era. I'm obviously not from that era, but I don't feel like that was a majority of people, because anything that gets publicized to us, right, that gets advertised to us, it's generally a small percentage of people. If you look at the news, you're gonna think that every Republican is like the ones that were at the Capitol, right? But in reality, that was a very small percentage of people. And that's what I'm saying. So I think that what was advertised to us, look at the modern trends. Like, I'm just going to use the term that I know to describe it, right? But homosexuality is advertised to us on a massive level, but I don't think that it's as prominent as those advertisements would suggest that they are, right? And so I think that kind of stuff falls into the same thing. I don't think that was the relationship for everybody, But again, like I don't think that that's right, and there's no reason that I can't partake in that. There's no reason that if my wife wants to work, that she can't work, right? I don't know. It's weird, but it's funny because. It's the way this article is worded, right? It's basically saying like it's okay for men to just give everything they have as long as you get what you want as women. And I think that is extremely detrimental. We're going to have a lot of 50-year-old women still calling them, I've already messed it up, so I'm just going to roll with it, still calling themselves bad bitches because they got trapped in that mentality and pushed every good person away, right? Or they just got used. That's my opinion, because I'm sorry, if you're a guy listening to this, there's nothing wrong with taking a woman to get a cup of coffee. So do not think that the value of the item is what is going to maximize the experience, because that's not what it's about. You know what I'm saying? And the truth of it is, right, I think that any man that's worth a damn is going to try to provide all those things anyways. And I think the more that women try to force that and look for it, the less they're going to find of it. That's my opinion. You know, because I would love for my wife to be able to not have to work, if that's what she wants, right? Because it goes back to that too, right? Like it's fine if that's what you want. If it's not what you want, then let's not do it. Let's figure out what you want to do, right? But I think any man that's worth the damn is going to try their damnedest to provide all that anyways, because I think that is important to a lot of men, to be able to provide that security, right? Because I mean, yeah, okay, we're natural born hunters, but we're also natural born providers, right? It's like ingrained in us to take care of our family, most of us at least. You know, I know that a lot of I know that there's men out there that enjoy the lavish lifestyle things, right? Like they strive for those things. My stepbrother's one of them. Like he's very big into the material things, and it's a lot of his motivation and his drive, and then there's nothing wrong with that, right? But I would argue that that's probably not the norm. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen that meme where it's like it's an apartment room and it's got a TV on the floor, no stand or anything like that, and like a fold out camping chair, and it's captioned as "Men see nothing wrong with this picture," because that's exactly right. Like we don't see anything wrong with it. Like what more do you need? It's a chair, it's a TV, you're good. You got a roof over your head, right? Like I would argue my wife is literally the only reason I'm civilized at all. If it was up to me, guys, I'm telling you, I would sleep in this damn truck. I would live out of this truck if I had to. Like, it doesn't bother me. It does not bother me. Do I like my house? Of course I like my house. But do I need it? No. Like, my wife is literally the reason I'm civilized. Okay? She's literally the reason I'm not cutting open cows in the middle of the field and eating their hearts or whatever. Or their livers. That's what that guy does on the internet, right? He eats cow liver. Liver King or something like that. I don't know. But that's the point I'm trying to make, right? Like, I think for most men, like, we would be okay with that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And so arguably women are important because they civilized us. They told us we need to shower. They're like, no, you need to shave that crap off your face because you look ridiculous, or at least trim it, right? Like it can't be all scraggly looking like you just rolled out of a cave, right? Like those are real things, you know, and I don't know. So I personally feel like any man that's worth the damn is going to try to do those things anyways. And I think what that article suggests is that you should ignore the people who are trying, right? Because first of all, we're not all rich. We're not all rich. We have goals and ambitions too, you know, and shoot, man, like sometimes you just can't afford it. Right. And so like, if you read into that too much, you're going to be like, oh, don't mess with him. He doesn't have enough money. Well, good luck then. Good luck to you. That is a dangerous thing to jump into, to hold on to. I don't know. Super dangerous. But crazy. It is interesting though, because I knew that there was a bunch of guys on TikTok and stuff that were constantly screaming that alpha male thing. You know, they're like, oh, if you don't wake up and if you don't run 32 miles and if you sleep more than 2 hours a week, you ain't a man. You need to swallow that up. You need to dig deep and you need to go out there and you need to make a freaking living. Okay? That's what you need to do. You want to be a man? You need to be a man. I don't know. You know the best way not to be a piece of shit? Don't be a piece of shit. That's how you do it, all right? You get up, you sleep less than 3 hours a week. Like, I knew that those guys were out there, right? I did not know that that there was a whole section of women pushing this kind of mentality, because I feel like it's a mixed message, right? Because there's part of it, I agree. Like, yes, I think it's important for women to have a sense of self appreciation for the things that they're able to achieve. That's very important. I think that's important for anybody. You know what I mean? And I can understand how maybe in the past, like that wasn't something that was preached, right? So I definitely feel that sense of independence is very important. But also at the same time, suggesting that being a part of a relationship and suggesting that it can be detrimental in ways like that, then I think that the problem is the relationship, because I'm going to encourage my wife to be independent on a lot of things, but I'm also going to feel inclined to take care of things, because that's, in my mind, that's my job, right? To support her and to provide, right? And so, like, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't also in turn have some of my own pride in myself, right? And independence in myself, and be able to do things, right? And I don't know, that to me, that is dangerous conversation. That is dangerous conversation. And I think the crazy part is that that's stuff that my daughter could be exposed to. That's a thinking that my daughter could be exposed to. And obviously it's up to me to show her a good example, and it's up to my wife to show her a good example, right? But we are all influenced by the outside world. The article said it best, that people are more normalized and comfortable in confiding in complete strangers on the internet than they are people in their lives half the time. And maybe it's because there's that wall between the face-to-face contact. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But it is a scary reality, right? To know that there's a vast majority of people that are more likely to talk to some complete stranger on the internet than the people close to them in reality. You know what I mean? And so, though it's up to us to show a good example, she's also going to be heavily influenced by the outside world. And I know that. And to know that thought process is out there, first of all, like I said, men are scrutinized for how they view women all the time. I don't think there's a man alive that hasn't been called shallow, right? Because when you don't choose a certain woman as a guy, right? What's the reasoning? Oh, he's shallow. He chose her because she looks better, or this or that, right? Like that's always been a thing. So to assume that there's no scrutiny on our behalf for looking at women who we find attractive, right? Or looking for women that we find attractive, to assume that there's no scrutiny on that is, first of all, it's far-fetched. Like that's a bit ridiculous, right? But at the same time, I get where they're coming from, right? Because it's also a sense of accomplishment for men, I think, right? Like when the guy gets the super attractive girl, it's like a sense of accomplishment, right? And sometimes that works out, but I would argue that most times it doesn't. Why? Because it's not authentic most of the time. Sometimes it is, sure. But, I think that's the exception, not the rule, because what's authentic is who the person is, like what inside them makes you want to do all those things that this woman is preaching, right? And looks might, I think, get you in the door on that, but it ain't going to keep you in the house. That's my opinion. Because that's only going to go so far. At the end of the day, I think that, we're not good at showing it, but us men, we want to feel appreciated and loved, right? And at the end of the day, you need that. And if it's solely based on what the man can provide, then is your love only based off of what's being provided? And so if that ceases to be a thing, are you gone? You know what I'm saying? Like that's a fair question in that regard, in that assessment, right? So I don't know, I think it's very dangerous. But the biggest thing I want to relay to is, I think I have some young men that listen to this, right? Take those girls out for coffee, talk to them, get to know who they are. There's nothing wrong with that, and you should not feel inadequate if that's the best date that you can provide. If you want to do more, then by all means go out and do more. You know what I mean? But if you want to get to know somebody or spend time with somebody, and let's say you're on a budget, life's hard, and maybe $6 for some coffee is a lot more feasible than $60 for some dinner, right? Don't be ashamed of that. Don't be ashamed of that at all. Take those chances. Do those things. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I read that part and it really, like I said, I thought we wake up on the weekends and I'm like, hey babe, let's go get some coffee. Sorry babe, married a broke ass. Broke joke who's about to lose his job. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. I don't know. Don't feel ashamed of that, guys. But hey, listen, I'm way over my max here. Oh, it's not a max. I can literally go for as long as I want. But I don't want to keep you guys all day. So that's the show, guys. I hope it provided some insight into my mind in particular. But I hope that the articles provided some insight into your everyday life. Or at least that it was entertaining. I hope that it was entertaining. So if you like the show, if you don't like the show, if you don't like it, please let me know so I can improve on things. I want to be better about it. You know, it is what it is. I'm not perfect. There's probably things I could be doing better. Maybe you got some tips. You know, not those tips, you guys. Don't be sending me those tips in the DMs. All right, I want that crap. Cause I'll send you one back. What up? No. If you do like the show, don't like the show, whatever, please let me know. You can email me directly. That's also the place where you'll want to send your death threats, because I don't want them to get lost in the social media exiles that I do, where I just like, I'm off. I want to make sure I get those. Okay. So if you got any death threats, complaints, gripes, appreciation, whatever the case is, please email me directly at averagediscussion@gmail.com. That's all one word, averagediscussion@gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/average discussion. On Instagram, you guessed it, average discussion. Over on X, formerly known as Twitter. I think if you still type in twitter.com, it takes you to it. Yeah, at ABG discussion. On Threads, average discussion. TikTok, average discussion. I deleted all my videos. I don't want them Chinese spies having all that. No, honestly, if I do use it, I want to have more content geared towards the podcast. That's the only reason why. There was probably some gold on there, but hey, if you didn't see it before, sucks to be you. Let's see. I think that's it. The show is available on Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, probably some other places I don't know. The only place I know for sure it's not on is Apple Podcasts, because Apple is a pain in my backside. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's about it. Let me know what you guys think. Please like, subscribe. Oh, youtube.com. Okay, the channel's Average Discussion. Please head over there. Give me a subscribe. I'd like to do these live. I do have this idea. I'm going to get a digital recorder and then I'll just do the live stuff from my phone. I think that'll work out really well. But we'll see. We will see how it goes. All right. So that's the show, guys. I really don't want to go to work. Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Hey, as always, guys, please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. And until next time, I'm out.